We've had a pretty exciting year this year, speaking at a lot of different conferences, right? We got to see a lot of different trends. I think I'm curious to say, what is the biggest trend you've seen come out of a lot of these conferences? We've been at the Gartner conference, North American Finance Executive Summit, the AICPA Future of Finance Advisory Group, among some others, where we've polled probably around 200 CFOs on what's going on around transformation. So what are you seeing on your side out there?
I mean, I think over the first really 3/4 of this year, we've seen people still, especially in the finance kind of domain, still looking for the perfect use case to get started with scaling AI. So I think even finance leaders at this point are familiar with a lot of the productivity use cases. How are they using it to clean up their emails, writing their employee reviews, right? Things like that.
Yeah, the employee handbook.
Yeah, I think pretty much everyone in the enterprise is starting to adopt it and using Copilot or chat to help with those things. But it's really, how am I going to use this to then create efficiency, cost savings, automation throughout the organization? Everyone thus far at these conferences are still searching for that perfect use case. And I think some things are starting to surface. But that's kind of the trend. It's okay, well, I know these tools are out there. I understand them a little bit better. How do I actually use them to actually drive efficiency now? And so I think that's where the trend's going. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of the platforms out there that folks are using in the finance ecosystem, starting to enable these features that it can actually be used within technology platforms, so that way it can start to scale. I think that's the concept of what we like to refer to as embedded AI. Yep. I know you always use that term, kind of embedded AI. And what we mean by that is really a software platform turning on AI that has context about the platform itself, so that way someone can actually use a chat or something else to be able to actually interface with that platform. I don't know, what's your take? You use the term all the time. So when you say embedded AI, what do you mean by it?
Yes. Well, so I think you hit the nail on the head, is that people are still struggling to get AI to scale. I think that is compounded by finance and accounting in certain situations still not fully owning the tech stack. And really what that means is across the ERP, the EPM solution, which is all the closed consolidation solutions, budgeting and forecasting, like Oracle, EPM, OneStream, et cetera. Understanding those solutions and actually having them fully implement it to what they're able to do, to then be able to take advantage of the embedded AI, which is in those platforms. Oracle in particular, which really has strong embedded AI across the close process, the budgeting and forecasting process, and the ERP. When we talk about embedded AI, we're looking at it across really that tech stack. The platforms that are the most advanced, like Oracle, that's where you're going to be able to use agents, for example, from Oracle to cross your close, your budget, and your forecast, all the way to your reporting cycle down to your analysis cycle. An example of this coming out of AI world, we saw a really, really great demo from Oracle. Of course, safe harbor from them that this was an advanced demo, but you get an idea of where this is going. They showed it was an example of, hey, I'm in FP&A, I'm the VP of Finance, I'm coming in, I want to see how we're trending towards our quarter from a revenue standpoint. Are we on track to hit or miss? They used AI to predict out their revenue, look out a couple weeks and say, hey, you guys have probably a $90 million shortfall coming up based on everything that we see from your inventory counts, right? Your shipments, your DSO, all that, to then be able to take that information, do the analysis, and go all the way back into the ERP and then into supply chain to come back with specific recommendations to make to close that revenue gap. So normally if you think about FP&A, they would see that variance, and then it would take them days or weeks to figure out why they're missing. In this case, the embedded AI spotted the potential miss and found 3 different customers with 10 different POs that they figured out how they could get out the door with discounting, and then automatically reforecast it, what the impact on margin would be with those discounts, and they were able to hit their revenue with that. And that was all at the click of a button, right? So that's a top tier example, but that's where this is going. And that's why finance and accounting need to look at their ERP and their EPM systems and what they're using and make sure that they're building these out so that they're able to ultimately get to that example, right? To where it's fully connected.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where organizations have a huge advantage is when they are operating more on when they've already made the journey, they're in a cloud platform that is able to actually have some of this context behind it when you actually have an agent that needs to interact with the software. I know you spoke about Oracle, OneStream, and some of the large ERP vendors out there are embedding this in the solutions. One of the things that's a little bit unique about SC&H is how we blend a lot of our finance and accounting implementations with our kind of data engineering and data science resources. One of my team members just got back from the Power Platform Conference, which is hosted by Microsoft, and the big topic this year was MCP servers. So this has kind of kept coming up over the last couple months. I've heard it more and more, and this is really the mechanism that's going to allow your ChatGPT or a Copilot to interface with what you're talking about, the agent that's embedded with these platforms, to actually have context on how to make something happen. So the example you gave was great. We had a team member that was recently playing around with this where it was asking the ERP solution, essentially hooked up Claude. So just open up on their local machine. How can I add a sales order to my ERP? And because it can connect to an MCP server, which actually has the context around how the ERP works, then you can interface with it and actually knows how to operate like an accountant and can go in and actually put in a sales order with someone's name, the email address, the amount. That is how you're actually going to get to actually having an agent that is actually able to take a sales order, implement it, and have it coded in the ERP correctly versus having the human interface do it for you.
Yeah, it's the business context that's needed, right?
Exactly.
I think that's where there's been AI almost came out and it kind of distracted and detracted from what finance and accounting needed to be focused on, right? Because they were looking for, the Ozempic of finance, where it's just, hey, we're done, we did it, right? But there's still the hard layer of discipline that you need to do, which is getting your data right. Yeah. Which is a heavy focus that you have on aligning data across multiple ERPs, subsystems, getting that enterprise data model right beyond the chart of accounts, and then getting the systems right across the ERP, EPM, and then the data solutions that wrap it. No matter where AI is, you still need to do that work. Even in the Oracle platform, if you have Oracle ERP implemented, but it's not done right, it's not going to work, right? So it all comes back to having that discipline. Nobody wants to wake up and run every morning, but that's what you got to do.
100% agree. I think the rush and kind of what we're talking about is people were looking for the use cases, and then it becomes a little more tangible because now we have a way to actually interact. We can pick something small like how to add a sales order, right? That can be the first thing we kind of tackle to prove out an AI investment is going to actually yield fruit, right? I'm going to get some ROI from this. I see benefit from it. But then to what you're saying, the same disciplines around even any sort of transformation project that you're going to go through, that needs to be applied to how you're going to use AI. Yeah. So going through and making sure that you're addressing up front with the right strategy, right? With AI, there's also the concerns of data breaches and security. So you have to go through and make sure that what you're doing is going to be governed and how you're going to implement it is actually being tested, right? And go through the same sort of process. It's not going to just be flip it on, right? You're going to flip it on and you're going to be wowed. Oh man, this thing just actually talked to my ERP platform and it inserted a record. Well, there's a whole lot of testing and scrutiny that need to go in that before you're going to deploy that and just tell your accounts payable person to hands off. Now just ask the agent to do it. So there's gonna be a little more work that goes involved there. But you have to structure these things again. Get a win. Understand how it works. Educate your team how it's going to work, and then actually put the right resources in place to put a scalable approach to it. Again, so it's governed. It's secure, it's been tested, people know how to use it, they know what its purpose is, and then it actually truly can scale. So I think we're going to see the same disciplines that finance teams, really anyone in the organization, as you're going through any sort of implementation or transformation project, it's going to be the same. Yeah. But I think right now it's just grasping the reality of what it can do, and then, okay, how do I put the right resources, the right team around this to make it successful? Yeah,
100%. I think that also kind of goes into the other core piece, which is having a strong vision from the top, right?
Yep.
CFO level all the way down, and not just having that vision, but also having people bought in to where you're going and why you're doing this transformation. I think that was one of the other trends that we've seen is people are pretty burnt out from going through one transformation after another, which at the end of the day, transformation, it's not a trend anymore. This is the nature of the game, and this is what finance and accounting are going to be faced with. But if you have clear direction and a clear vision, people can understand the purpose and get behind it and understand where they're ultimately marching to. I think on the other side, that also goes into the importance of the vision coming from the top. I think we've seen some instances where IT is still leading the charge on some of this stuff, and then finance ends up with a budgeting and forecasting solution that really doesn't hit the mark.
Yep. I think that's a great point. So, I mean, like you see that all the time where, like with the more technical resources come from IT or data teams, you're not going to be able to execute this without them, right? And they're going to have the understanding of how to actually implement a lot of what's going on behind the scenes with how agentic AI works, right? How you're going to consider context modules, the different LLMs you may plug into, and how it's going to work. But without having the strong business leadership guiding that and instructing on kind of what the outcomes need to be, you're going to build something, and you don't know what it's going to do.
Yeah.
Right. You might have a lot of cool things that you're paying a lot of money for that seem really effective, but in reality, they can't be. They don't have a practical use,
right?
A practical use case. So I think that's where leadership understanding kind of the direction of where it needs to go, setting the vision, and then also putting the rigor around what is the true business outcome we're marching to, and making sure that they have stake in that, right? And they're guiding technical teams to deploy in that manner. That's again, it's table stakes. That has to be there. It's going to be that way forever, and for rightfully so.
Yeah, 100%. It's it's like your spouse or partner asking you what you want for dinner, and you say you don't care, and then they show up with Chinese, and you just had Chinese for lunch, and now you're pissed off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It's like, well, you didn't really say what you wanted, so there you go.
Yep.
Now you're not happy. Now you got the same thing you got earlier. So, so I think that's a core thing that we've been seeing a lot of, and that's a lot of the work we've been doing at the Future of Finance, right, and helping to define what that future is, and addressing the mindset component with that.
Yep.
I think there's still I think we're still seeing a big gap of people just understanding how some of these core pieces fit together. We were just on a call yesterday where somebody had 2 different EPM solutions, 3 different ERP vendors, right? It was like Adaptive and OneStream both implemented. And it's like, you look across this, it's like, that's never really going to be sustainable for when you want to actually get to the AI level. When you have accounting on a different solution, FP&A not talking to accounting, you have your operations teams operating across 3 different ERPs.
Yep.
That's not the future, right?
Well, you kind of brought up using the Ozempic approach before, right? Like it might be a little more painful to have to go through some steps to consolidate platforms or to get people into a common kind of ecosystem from a technology perspective. But a lot of times that's the first step that needs to happen. I think I said this before, when you start, if people who have already moved to the cloud solutions and are operating there or kind of working in the same ecosystem, they're at such an advantage over organizations that are using disparate systems, legacy ERP systems that are not going to have this stuff built into it. So then you're going to be forced to build, right? Your teams are going to be forced to build something on top of that. And that comes with inherent risk. There's not as much testing behind it. And then again, the institutional knowledge of how it works, you're relying on a select few to have that versus, an R&D team that at scale for some of the bigger cloud platforms that's trying to get rolled out globally across the platform, right?
Yep.
So I think that's just some risk that if you don't do the hard thing first of making sure that you're in the right kind of technology ecosystem, you have your data in the right spots, right? You've gone through the data cleansing and quality governance checks that you need to actually have something that an AI model can glean the right context from, like you're going to struggle, right? You're going to run into this problem. So I think it's taking some of those hard steps first is going to be what you need to do to get the tangible benefits of everything AI can deliver.
Yeah, you gotta eat the frog, as they say.
Eat the frog. Only frog legs in my diet, Tom.
So that goes into the next thing too, though, is around upskilling. That's another huge trend that we always see pop up. But when we ask people what are they upskilling their people with, there's never really a good answer. It's always, well, we're going to teach them AI. It's like, okay, well, what AI? What do you like? ChatGPT? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the groups that don't really fully understand the EPM solution and the data solutions that they have in play are missing out on future capabilities, right? It's, always hear FP&A is trying to get trained up on Python. It's like, well, maybe it might not, hurt to know, but if you're on Oracle EPM, understanding the capabilities of that platform and how to actually own and maintain it to then take your finance and planning processes further already on your enterprise solution would be a good place to look and invest in. And I think we actually have a EPM training coming up with Oracle in our office where it's going to be hands-on next week, which is going to be really cool. It's going to be really focused on AI, talking about the embedded AI stuff, right?
Yep.
And showing where they're going across the whole suite. So everything from predictive cash forecasting, account reconciliations and how AI is in that process, the close process, all the way out to, predicting different P&L line items and so forth.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a great use case is you kind of get back to the embedded AI and some of the things that we're seeing of what people are actually investing in, what they're starting with. Anomaly detection has been a big one because I think the risk there around, actually having AI build a forecast for you and say this is what the plan's going to be. There's some inherent risk and there's a lot of kind of factors that go into that to proof out whether or not that's correct or not, right? You're basically doing R&D research to prove out that this model's correct, and there's a lot of variables you have to go through. By doing something more that's focused on like anomaly detection or trying to call out variances or have it focus on that, they can churn through a lot of information. It can spit that out. And again, it's more so you reviewing it and giving you a faster way to actually determine if something's right or not or approve it. That's like a great use case, I think, that we're seeing folks start with versus, again, go build my forecast for me completely hands off. I'm not
just
let
it go.
Right. Yeah. So I think we're seeing more of that targeted use case to proof it out, which is, I think something you guys are going to get into as you go through that hands-on event.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of goes into just some of the ways that we've been helping organizations figure out where they need to focus on, whether it's transformation, AI, whatever. And we'll be going through some of this out at the Future of Finance, but it's really the DNA of finance that we call it, right? Where you have the four main activities that make up finance and accounting. On the left side, you have really what's called the hindsight view, which is the information in the organization, right? So all your transactions, everything that ultimately comes together to that you're pulling insights out of to figure what has happened, right? How did this month go? Did we do well? Did we not do well? Then you get into the influence, which is foresight of how are we going to influence the business based on what we know, right? And then ultimately, how are you going to impact the business and actually bring change throughout the organization? I think what we've seen, and from recent polling from the AICPA, they did a large study back in 2020, and I think they redid it, and they saw that the spread of where people spend their time hasn't really moved much. There's still a large, significant portion of accounting and finance that are spending their time on the left side of the equation versus the right side of the equation. And so that's where kind of having that context and polling your team to figure out where they actually spending their time in the close process, in the forecast process, and the analysis process to then help you to determine where are the actual bottlenecks and what do we need to do to actually fix it. Is it an ERP problem? Is it an EPM platform problem? Is it we have data modeling problems? And then to your point with like anomaly detection, right? That's where you can start figuring out where that can speed up time to then be able to redeploy resources into the more forward-looking analysis of where they need to be, right?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, you brought up kind of the data quality being something that can be like a precursor to effectively using AI and moving forward with this. That it's funny because AI can actually help solve the data quality issues as well. So we've actually done this with a few customers where we've leveraged AI techniques to help cleanse their data issues, right? So you imagine someone that has, whether it's their procurement system or maybe they have in their ERP, their entire vendor list, right? Maybe they have thousands of vendors out there and, SC&H group. Maybe we're in the vendor list as SC&H group. Maybe someone else keyed in as SCH, right? There could be 5 permutations of how someone would spell that and it's not getting checked very often. So it could be all over the place. Having AI basically give a way to scrub through that and not make it a manual task to clean that up and then put rules in place so that way it can only be one thing going forward and having the right context to do it as well. Maybe I only want to pick the name that has the highest spend, right? I'm going to use that as the rule as to what's going to be my true vendor of source going forward. You can use AI to help with that and speed that task up. So you have the data quality issue that's preventing some of the bigger use cases with AI, or leverage AI to help with the small use case that you have to do the first thing, right? Yeah. So it's interesting, but we're seeing more of that around the data cleansing, data quality being great use cases for a first step into AI that's also not super costly, right? It's a one-time kind of exercise, but it can be done quick and effectively.
Let's talk through that a little bit more because the T-Hub, as you termed it, right?
Yep.
Is a pretty key instrument that you've been rolling out to a lot of clients that are going through transformation. And I think this goes in, when we talk about the tech stack, you have, again, your ERP or ERPs, in this case that you're going to talk about, multiple different source systems. Then you have your closed consolidation solution, which is statutory reporting, management reporting, budgeting, forecasting, all that. There's a challenge that a lot of organizations have, right, in getting all of that information standardized if they're on 40 different ledgers across the country.
Yep.
So your solution sticks in. I'll let you take it from here, but helps on two fronts, right? Standardizing that data, but then also sets it up so that you can transfer all the transactions into a future state ERP where you're all transacting on the same chart, right? So go ahead and hit that.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, we coined it the T Hub, so Translation Hub. Is the longer spelling out, or our data migration mapping engine. So it has a couple different use cases, but we've seen this with organizations that have a number of disparate ERPs, organizations that are highly acquisitive and bring on new organizations that are never going to get adopted into the core ERP system or chart of accounts, right? So when you kind of have all this on the left side of the equation where you have, again, numerous ERPs, different charts of accounts, different nomenclatures, how do we get that mapped into the centralized way that the business wants to view their financial information, right? We've done it for procurement data, vendor data as well. But we have a methodology where we come in and using a little more data sophistication. So a lot of times we can use our clients' kind of data platform, whether using Snowflake or Azure and the tools around it, to put a mapping engine or the T Hub in front of the financial systems. So by doing that, we have a common way to bring in different source files. It could be direct integrations, whatever it may be. That's kind of the left side of the equation, and giving the business a way to map that to their chart of accounts, right? In a way that they can actually interface with it. They don't have to rely on an IT team to go back and make mapping changes. It's very transparent, but a way for them to say, oh, okay, I know I have this one subsidiary. I know it's going to map in this way. Here's how I want it to map. If something comes in new, it's going to notify them, and they have a way to make that change. But it puts the control in the business hands, but leverages the technology behind the scenes to be able to make that a process that can happen month over month, day over day, really, if you want to do it that frequently, to actually map to the global chart. So it speeds that stuff up, time to value becomes quicker, and you don't have to worry about replacing all those legacy systems. If that's the way you want to run, and that organization or subsidiary is working just fine on the platform they're on, and instead of going through a 2-year project to integrate them into your ERP, maybe this is the better way, and the time to value is there by just putting that mapping layer in place. So I definitely see a ton of benefit with it. I think more organizations should explore it because, again, it eliminates kind of the time and expense on something that maybe doesn't have the value of getting the results right away.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you the option. It can almost be the precursor before you go through the ERP implementation, right, to get everything modeled out, have everything lined up there, so when you're cutting over, it's pretty seamless. Or you can go through a more phased approach so it's not a big bang, right, and go 40 ledgers all at once around the world. Good luck.
Yeah, we've seen this too. You mentioned, it happened with like procurement systems as well. So trying to integrate that into a new platform, and that's very messy data, whether it's vendor names, product information, all of that can be keyed in very differently, especially if you have different subs using the same procurement system. You may have the same vendor in there multiple times. You may be using duplicate product codes. That's a great example where a translation hub with some AI embedded in it to actually detect when we're migrating the data, if there are duplicates, a way to give someone a way to review that and then say, hey, I want to accept this. This is the standard going forward. Throw that back into the translation layer, and then it's good to go for all the migrations going forward. So help clean the data process in the same fashion and expedite the process.
That's where the more you go through those mapping processes, right, it understands more of the business context and can proactively map or suggest mappings for you, right? So you're not digging through invoices and everything to figure out where something goes.
Exactly. Suggesting it and giving a faster path to correct it is exactly what we want to do. And another trend that we're seeing, Tom, is kind of this emphasis on before you go through a massive transformation project, what's the right way to get started? And a lot of times it's doing a more tailored kind of consulting assessment or roadmap initiative. So that's something we've been asked to do more and more often. It's actually more of our kind of core offering at this point, is before going through that and trying to scope a project of that magnitude, actually coming in and meeting with business stakeholders to map out what the future even needs to look like, right? Assessing the current state, so understanding the data ecosystem, the finance ecosystem that sits there today, but then being able to actually go through what their vision is and help them establish that as an organization, and then map out kind of different options, right?
Yep.
So are we going with a massive transformation where we have to move kind of all of our core platforms into a cloud-based technology? Do we need to start with something smaller, right? Can we do things in parallel? That's just a trend that I think we've been seeing. So before you're jumping into, again, an RFP or going through a massive transformation project to get there, I think looking for some outside help to help you map those processes and align it with technology and making sure that you're making the right choices and understand the pros and cons of each is something that I think people can really benefit from, and we've seen a huge uptick in with our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, one thing that you and I always talk about on this that's kind of challenging or interesting, right, is a lot of times we go through these roadmaps, we can very clearly see like what the absolute best right answer is. A lot of times that is very far away from what people have from a budget standpoint.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, it's always funny with the budget conversation, right? People don't want to show their cards, right? They think we're a bunch of car salesmen coming up trying to, sell them the whatever. But I think that's where if this is more advice, I guess, to the finance organizations that are going through this, if you can be more transparent on what you have available, then the better we can be at recommending short-term phases while keeping an eye on the future on where you need to go without hamstringing you. Right, I think
that's really important. We joke about this too. It's kind of like when you're having your HVAC system, replaced or serviced, right? I think the new trend is for someone to come out, they'll assess it, they hand you the iPad, right?
Yeah,
it's going to have the platinum level service, it's going to have the gold level service and the bronze level service, and they do that for a reason, right? Obviously, they want you to go with the gold one, and we would want our clients to go with the greenfield best approach all the time as well. But it's important to understand those options, right? And if the client is going to get what the best thing they can afford and what they can put in place is the gold option or the bronze, at least they know where they can strive to go, and they understand kind of what would go into that, and it sets expectations. It gets the right budget level conversation to get the right resources around it, and it just makes it's going to make the next step that much easier if everyone's on the same page. So I think kind of understanding that and even asking, whatever vendor you're using for any of these transformation projects, what does the best look like? Tell me what the best looks like. If I did it all, what would that include? How would you recommend it? And then based upon like our constraints or what we're operating with, what do you think is kind of the best, again, value?
Yeah,
I can
best
get out of
interim
this?
step to at least solve.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Without falling too far behind or making the misstep. 100%.
Yep. For sure.